Right, we're definitely going to have to get rid of that, aren't we? Welcome to episode 19 of the First4LCFC Podcast, where we're once again going to be looking over another big week for Leicester City as the games continue to come thick and fast. And I'm delighted, joining me to do so is both Christian Mosen and Edward Noon. How are you both, lads?
Very good, thank you.
All good.
Good. I'd say I was glad to have you here, but since we've started this, you've done nothing but give me abuse. So thank you very, very much. Right. So listen, looking back, we've got two games to cover in two different competitions with two different lineups, but the same result as Leicester got two wins to overcome their mini wobble to hit something resembling form once again. So let's start with the first game that feels absolutely ages ago already. But of course, Leicester faced strugglers West Ham, recorded a fairly resounding 4-1 win. So, Chris, first question for you. Is Harvey Barnes the best player to ever play the game of football?
I've got my notes up in front of me, and I'll quote you some of the stuff I put down actually whilst watching the match. Best I've seen Barnes to date. So you read into that what you wish.
Pardon?
All I think is that you've been doodling on your little notepad, just Harvey and a little heart. That's what I reckon was on there. But look, he was much better, wasn't he? Granted. He was up against Zabaleta, but he had a great game, didn't he?
No, I think, just to bring him down a peg or two, though, I've said it all along, he is a massive confidence player. And when things are going with him or for him, it's great, I'm not sure if we'll remember that Maddison chance. Keeper pulled off an incredible save, but if that came off, that would have been a contender for goal of the year, the month or goal of the season. Great interplay. But yeah, otherwise, Barnes was great. I felt Perez and Barnes were both good value on the night, especially in terms of tracking back as well. I think, the minimum requirement we can ask is that everyone gives it 100%. We've been a bit critical of Perez recently, but, getting back, doing the dirty work, the hard yards, and, overall, I feel the two wider men had a really good game.
Yeah, Perez definitely showed his value, especially defensively, I thought, where, like you said, he was constantly coming back to win the ball. But I think we just looked like we had our old sort of dynamism back in the side, didn't we? In terms of they were buzzing around, we were attacking, we were keeping the ball, and things just seemed to go better for us, didn't it?
Well, yeah, I think it's that key word, isn't it? In terms of consistency, like. I was again to cite Barnes and Perez. Like if they put in that sort of an average of 7.5 out of 10 every week, I'm sure we'd take that as opposed to having like 9 out of 10 every 4 to 6 weeks or 4 to 6 fixtures. It's just like you say, we have got that dynamism. When we make changes to the squad, it's like that dynamism runs right deep in the team. It doesn't seem awkward. Like everyone can read each other's play. With the exception of, I think, Wigan earlier in the season in the FA Cup, that was a bit of an awkward performance. But otherwise, we'll touch upon Brentford, and it just feels like we make X amount of changes, but that spirit and that style of play is deep rooted into Leicester City at the moment.
Absolutely. So both Barnes and Perez had good performances, and off the back of a bit of recent criticism. But another two players who have been under pressure, Ed, were both Ben Chilwell and Yuri Tielemans, but both of them had brilliant games as well. What do you think's changed in their play?
Well, it could be argued whether it has anything changed at all, or was it sort of the fact they've both been left out recently and given a chance to recharge those batteries, and maybe they've come back with a bit more hunger to prove to both themselves and sort of the rest of the squad that they should be starting every game anyway. But I couldn't really put my finger on it. It was just like it was back to, at least at times in the West Ham game, back to what we were watching earlier in the season, where we were absolutely dominating and creating chance after chance, and 4 goals, and that was without the main man up front really. So it was just like brilliant football again. Like still not perfect, still at times where we slacked off a little bit, but it's much better than what we've been seeing recently. So very happy days.
Yeah, I thought Tielemans was back to the sort of form that made us so excited to sign him. He was always seem to be thinking one step ahead, dictating play, picking it up all over the place. But of course, as you mentioned, we lost Vardy pretty early on in the game. Iheanacho coming on in his place. But I mean, it could potentially be argued that Leicester maybe even looked better when Vardy went off.
I've got a couple of questions for you just before I sort of answer that question. Like on TV, like the FX, like the microphones, it just seemed to go like dead eerie when Vardy went down. And
it was bizarre.
I know you were there, but like, what did it feel like? What was the atmosphere like in the ground for those 2 minutes where no one knew what was going on?
It was. You're right. It was absolutely dead eerie. It was because of the nature of it when he grabbed it and immediately signalled to the bench, and everyone understood that or thought at the time it was his hamstring, which is, as we all know, a bad injury that will rule you out for quite some time. So when the physios came on, no one really knew what to do because they were just sort of waiting to see what the signals were going to be like, what the body language was like of all the players. And nothing was even coming from the West Ham fans because at that point we were absolutely battering them and they weren't making any noise anyway. So it was like the whole ground just stopped and just sort of held its breath. So when he got up and because he tried to play on, didn't he? And everyone, I think the relief showed through then. But yeah, it was absolutely bizarre.
Yeah, no, I'm not glad you agree, but that's certainly the way it sort of came across on TV. But you don't know whether they're sort of tampering with volume on TV or not. But yeah, it seemed a strange atmosphere. But back to the question in hand. In terms of, are we a different team or a more dangerous team potentially without Vardy? It's an interesting one because, like, when you've got a player like Kelechi Iheanacho in form, it's almost like we don't necessarily miss Vardy, especially not in terms of the interplay. Kelechi can get involved. He's playing through the middle, similar to Vardy. If anything, Vardy's more isolated, I feel, when he's on the pitch, not as involved. So it is an interesting one. And if we do go into Europe next season, these could potentially be the differences in a tough away fixture, whether you play Vardy maybe in these away games to try and stretch the opposition, but at home, if you want to try and dominate possession against a better team, and you want to be a bit more tricky against these better oppositions, then it could be time for a new striker or someone like Iheanacho just to link up. So, yeah, certainly an interesting debate to have.
I mean, do you think then, Ed, there's a difference in the style of play? Is there something that Iheanacho perhaps has that Vardy doesn't, or is that because we know Vardy's an all-round player? I'm not knocking him at all, but what does Iheanacho bring basically that Vardy doesn't?
Well, first of all, the original question, I did genuinely think we were better when Iheanacho came on. Like, maybe others would disagree, but I personally thought he linked up play better. He came and got the ball. He made some good runs, created chances. That's not to say Vardy wouldn't have had he been on the pitch for longer, because the West Ham defence and the whole team really were far from impressive. But I'm not sure. It's a tough one because obviously Vardy is Vardy. Everything he's done and everything he continues to do. And Iheanacho, but he has stepped up whenever he's had a chance this season, and I don't know. I don't want to say don't play Vardy, obviously, but I've been saying it for the last few weeks. Really, I wouldn't be against the idea of trying to put the two on the pitch at the same time and seeing what happens.
I mean, if he can figure out a way to keep the balance in the side, then absolutely. But I think we can all agree that Vardy getting injured now is probably no longer the absolute disaster that it would have been set at this point in last season.
Yeah, I mean, I must have said the word dynamic about 10 times already, but that's different. If we're going to compare it in black and white to the title winning season, we were so transparent, but somehow it worked. You watch highlights back, and it's literally route one, Mahrez, Vardy, like great link up, can't criticise it. But now, like the people studying us as the opposition, it's not such an easy job. It's the interplay. We're playing it long, we're playing it short, we're coming for it. There's plenty of different options out there. We're a trickier side, and I think it's important we have developed more dimensions to our game, because again, referencing Europe, there's different styles of play going to come against. For example, you go away to Italy, it's going to be a tricky defensive fixture. Like, we need to know how to break oppositions down. But then to criticise the way we're playing, we're fading in and out of matches so much lately. Like, I'm not saying these good results are masking anything, because a win's a win and we'll take them right now. But, in that West Ham game, what was it, 15, 20 minutes? Compare that to the first half, where they were literally parked in their own half, struggling to pass the ball 3 times to the halfway line. They brought a game to us for a period of the second half. And again, in Brentford, which we'll review in a minute, they had basically the whole second half. So against better opposition, we're going to get found out. It's just the quality that was lacking in those last 2 teams. So it's still something we need to be working on, really.
Yeah, because it did seem that the sort of, I think it was the goal that caused it, but Leicester really dropped off for, like you said, for 10 and 15 minutes just after half time. And it looked at that point, or it certainly felt that way, that the worry within the stadium was that Leicester were back to the Leicester of old, where they go a goal, get put under a bit of pressure, and suddenly they're going to struggle again.
It's an interesting one, because again, you mentioned the crowd, and sorry to jump in, but it's an apt time to do it. But did you not find, again, on the TV, it felt like the atmosphere, toxic's a strong word, but when it was 3 or 4-1, or when we were 1-0 up, everything was fine. But when West Ham have a dominant period, it just seems like it just goes dead quiet. I mean, was it like that? Yeah,
it's something I wanted to talk about, actually. I'm glad you brought that up. Because basically, the goal was so against the run of play. Like, we absolutely battered them in the first half. It felt easy. We were playing some lovely stuff. The goals, you just felt it was a matter of time, 2-0 up. And then they get a penalty out of nowhere, clumsy tackle probably by Ndidi. And then, like you said, the whole dynamic just changed. All of a sudden, people around me were on players' cases. They were it was back to them moaning at Chilwell, moaning at whomever. And yeah, you really did feel like this was that the game was slipping away almost, even though we were still winning. Because I remember my dad saying to me at the time, he was like, "Would you take 2-1 now?" So if they offered it to you, I was like, "Absolutely," because you don't really feel like this is going to go in any other way. But one thing I did want to say, not to blow smoke too hard, but Union FS lads up in the Kop were the only ones making the noise, and I do feel like they actually had a big hand in bringing the atmosphere back, because they just kept it going and going and going. And as people relaxed a little bit, they got back into it. And I think they did a really good job, actually, because I know that they've been criticised by a few people for whatever reason. But I thought they were fantastic in that game. But I don't really understand why the atmosphere changes in the way it does. And should it change like that?
Well, no. I mean, it's something that's we've mentioned a couple of times, like whether or not it's like this at other football grounds. Well, ironically, at West Ham, it's highly toxic at the moment, but that's for other reasons on and off the pitch. But like, do other fans sort of switch this fast? It's hard to say, especially if you don't get to go to these away games. Like on TV, it just seems like at Leicester, it's extreme, like either loud or quiet. Like the away fans on Saturday, hats off to them. It was really loud, and just from what I've read and stuff, like apparently that was like one of the best away atmospheres we've generated in a while, maybe because of the nature of the stadium, it being a cup tie, all that. But I mean, it just seems to be a bit hostile at times. And we've got to remember, we're third in the Premier League and still in both cups.
Yeah, and it wasn't like we were getting battered either. They had 3 shots in 15 minutes, and it's not like it was the Alamo and that we're just all hands to the pump. It was, they didn't really threaten Schmeichel, to be fair, and yet it still felt like we were going to struggle to see the game out, which I thought was really strange. But yeah, there you go. It's perhaps context is or perspective rather is required, because I mean that was our 8th win at home this season. I mean that's more than we've ever picked up in our first in that many games at home. By all accounts, it could be a record-breaking season, so there isn't any reason to get on their back. But hey ho, there you go. That's football for you. Nature of the game. Now, of course, They then moved on and played Brentford at the weekend in a completely different game in terms of the importance and the feeling and the team, obviously, with 8 or 9 changes. Ed, obviously, the game was on TV, so we all got to see this one. Does anyone stand out for you in terms of playing well? Stick with a positive.
Well, to just go against what you just said, I didn't actually get the chance to watch much of this game. So now I look a bit silly. So from what I saw, though, which I missed the goal, and I've thought from what I saw, we were the better team. But as Chris said earlier, they performed better in the second half, did they?
Yeah, I mean, they at the post had, well, more than enough possession to make it count, but they didn't.
Well, I mean, in the second half, it was about even possession wise. They had more shots than others. We couldn't really get into emotion. We weren't able to retain the ball. Whilst they never really threatened. They hit the post from a cross, I think, more than anything. But I mean, Chris, the players that came in that perhaps we would have been wanting to have a look at, for the likes of James Justin, Demarai Gray. How did you think those two got on?
Well, again, referring to my trusted notepad. I don't need to make a note about the sublime nature of the goal or the build-up. That pass was sublime. And then you got Justin, who's not lacking confidence. He's stepped up to the mark, no trouble. Great, what was it? First time cross, basically, wasn't it? And then Iheanacho. So I mean, his instinct is just as good, if not better, than Vardy's at present. So yeah, that was a classic goal, really. In terms of players that stepped up, it's a tough one. I think that, you got to give Ward a shout out as well. Again, I find it for keepers who don't play a lot. Obviously, they're in training every day, but his match sharpness is it seemed good, and obviously that save was straight at him towards the end. But reactions nonetheless. But again, classic Chris. I have to be a bit negative, and I'm going to have to go in on Mark Albrighton on this occasion. Right, let's start with the positives. He gives 110%. The energy he has got, he leaves it all out there on the pitch. But it does remind me of, say, when we're playing Sunday League or 7-a-side, 5-a-side, whatever it is, when you're looking over at the manager and you're desperate to get bought off, but the manager's not really got that in mind. He's thinking more tactical. It just seems like by the end of the match, he was playing deeper than Justin, basically just totally sitting back. It's not even that. Technically, he's very predictable. He hasn't got that composure that he once probably had. Everything seems a bit rushed. Like, he's a bit naive to be swiping the ball in first time. His chances created are probably high because of the nature of his play, but unlike the dynamic references we have made, I do feel he's lacking that dynamism. But he does a job and he gives 110%. But I do feel he's ending his his time at this level anyway. But yeah, just to summarise, great spirit from the start. We were just sensible in the first half, weren't we? We kept Brentford at arm's reach. It's just frustrating that we let him back into the game, really, in the second half.
Yeah, just on Albrighton, because I'll agree with you. I think offensively he didn't offer a lot. He got into good positions quite a few times, and his final ball really wasn't where it needs to be. I don't know whether that's because he was playing on the left and crossing with his left more than he previously had. But defensively, he like you said, he worked very, very hard, and he certainly put it in. But I thought he gave the ball away quite a lot. Just to add a negative to a negative, I just thought Demarai Gray was poor. I don't know what you boys, what you thought of it, Chris.
Yeah, from the small amount I saw of the game, I did think I just get frustrated watching him because what he did in the England youth and all the hope that we had that he'd develop. And don't get me wrong, he's not useless. I'm not saying that. He's still a very handy player. Well, a handy player, but he's just not kicked on to the level we thought. And this was a good opportunity against, weaker opposition who they themselves rotated, and many of their key players weren't even in the squad. So it was his chance, and he just he didn't really step up, did he?
I do feel this time is it's running out. Maybe it's a bit hasty to say could he potentially leave this window purely because of lack of our squad depth. So yeah, probably not going to happen. But we've discussed it before. But by the summer, I don't see him being less player. He's not. I don't know. We need more quality than what he's offering. He's just failed to develop, hasn't he? He hit a level and then he's not really progressed. If anything, he's regressed.
Yeah, I mean, if we brought a wide player in, you'd probably think it'd be between him or Albrighton and see who went. His step over to actual output ratio is way off. He just doesn't. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Though he's all the tricks without any real substance. I just felt that. One time we were about 3-on-1, and it was like if you look up, you'll see this pass, and he just held it and held it and held. Tried to beat his man, lost the ball. And it was just, it was just really frustrating. I think even because I was sat in the home end, and even a couple of the Brentford fans around me were talking about him. So, I was not impressed with him at all. But on we'll finish that review on a positive note. It was good to see Dewsbury-Hall given his debut. Didn't really have a huge amount of time in which to impact the game, but looks a tidy player, Chris. Yeah,
he's gone out on loan to Blackpool now, hasn't he? So for the rest of the season, that'll be good for his development. I think by all accounts, there was a lot of football league sides. So realistically, probably League One and below looking at him, but presumably he'll be going there to get a lot of minutes under his belt. He looks like a tidy operator, not so much from what I've seen, like you say, didn't really get into the game on Saturday, but from what you pick up from the under-23s, he's one of the more highly rated players coming through. And he's how old is he? 20? Is he 21?
May well be. I
think it's a bit of a tricky one, isn't it? Yes, that's young. But relatively speaking, in football terms, that's not Wayne Rooney young, is it? He needs to really, that's what I mean, get his game time and hopefully get back in with a squad over summer, and then sort of Hamza Chowdhury-esque be knocking on the door next season would be the ideal development for him, wouldn't it? But again, central mid, being that box to box, it's not a player we're lacking, so he's going to have a tricky time on his hands. But that's good, isn't it? As a young player, you want that challenge, and you got a good players to look up to around you as well.
Yeah, I think it's another sort of indictment of our youth system. Let his player to come through. He is 21, as you said. He's gone out on loan to Blackpool, so hopefully this will help his development. But there were some interesting comments made after the game, Ed. I don't know if you've seen them, but Rodgers is saying that instead of giving Dewsbury-Hall a debut in an easier game, maybe bringing him on if we were beating Wigan comfortably, he decided to throw him in at the deep end in a game that we were, not exactly strolling through. I mean, what do you make of that sort of tactic of chucking players in a difficult game?
I'm not really sure, to be honest. I'd assume at that stage his move away was already sealed, so it wasn't like he was putting him in the shop window to try and get some game time. Trying to put him in the shop window by showing he can do it against better teams. Sorry. Did we have any other midfield options on the bench? Just so I can have a bit of. Let me just have a look.
Context to it.
Tillemans was on the bench, but he wasn't used. I don't know. Who did he come on? He came on for Iheanacho.
Yeah, and then they pushed Perez up, and Pratt went in behind Perez.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's a defensive move, isn't it? Obviously, bringing on a midfielder for a striker, but so maybe if it was a like-for-like change, say. I don't know, Pratt or Chowdhury picked up a knock, I think he probably wouldn't have been put on. But given he was just like an extra body in the midfield, I think it's perhaps less of a risk. But yeah, that I don't really know what to make of it. It is a risk, isn't it? Obviously, and you don't really want to be, chucking away the win and having another game. So. I don't know.
You never know what's in these players' contracts, though, just to make it really boring. If there's anything that stipulates like I don't know, 3 appearances in a season, or literally 1 appearance in a season means X happens in terms of a pay upgrade. I don't know, something. Contracts are so confusing these days. It could be for a reason on or off the pitch, but like Ed says, I'm inclined to agree with him on a rare occasion. That is, you're adding an extra body in there. It's if it's a like for like, and we're hunting a goal, and you put a inexperienced senior, junior striker and senior team, then yeah, probably scratching your head. But at the end of the day, he was padding out at midfield.
I mean, I think we should the main thing that we should take from this is that you and Ed have agreed on something.
It happens. It does.
Well, absolutely outstanding stuff. So obviously, look, we got through. That's the important thing. We weren't fully pushed, I don't think, even though they possibly had the better of the second half. But of course, the draw has been done, and we have been drawn against either Birmingham or Coventry. What do you make of that draw? Are you happy with it?
I think it's one that the fans were, I say, hoping for, like it's some incredible rivalry. But for me, it was either that, like Coventry, because there's some form of rivalry there, but at home as well, because they're a lower league team, or Hillsborough away. Hillsborough away, Wednesday away at Hillsborough, purely because of it's one of my favourite grounds in England. Went Union Sheffield, and it's a good away day. But I think in terms of progression, then yes, thanks. We'll see you in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, good to be able to play a sort of a local team as well. Nice to have that option.
Yeah, I'm seeing it as just another chance to give like basically the reserves a run out. It's like these teams aren't as good as Brentford, and we went and put in obviously not an amazing display, but did enough, got through. Given that we're home this time, there's no reason why these players should not do a similar thing. So if it was against a big boy and we had to play our first team, then that's just more minutes in there of already hectic schedule. So you know what I'm like. Cup game rotation next.
Well, that is quite literally
Jurgen.
I mean, yeah. You probably do subscribe to the Jurgen Klopp view on.
He's doing all right this season. He seems to know how to manage. So.
I think it's fair to say he's got a bit of an idea about this whole Football Manager lark. But that does lead us on quite nicely to what will probably be, I guess, today's game against Aston Villa. So, I mean, the big news, obviously, for Leicester is that Vardy is fit enough to be involved. They've got Wilfred and Ndidi back. So, realistically, the only absentee from the squad is Nampalys Mendy, and I believe Wes Morgan has picked up a little bit of a knock. With that in mind, then, Ed, what sort of team are you putting out? It's a big game, chance to get to Wembley.
So, I guess my sort of headline team news, should I be at the helm tomorrow, which is highly unlikely. However, should I get the call up, I think I'd start Iheanacho over Vardy. I just don't. And I appreciate it's the semi-final second leg, massive game, and I would definitely have Vardy on the bench. But given that Rodgers has said himself he's not going to be 100%, and given our next game, which is literally in 4 days, something like that, is against Chelsea, one of the biggest games of the season, I'd just rather have him as a sub to draw upon and perhaps not even play if we're putting a good performance and comfortable win, and give Iheanacho the shot. He's just performed every time he's played this season, whether it's been in the league or in the cup. Did really well got the winner against Brentford, played great against West Ham. Vardy ain't 100%. I'd say, look, this is your chance, take it, and then reassess the striking situation at the weekend.
Chris, somebody tells me you might not agree.
I've been listening intently, and I'm trying to disagree, but I can't disagree because
Sweet Jesus,
I'm thinking it's Villa Park.
Good Lord.
Aston Villa are going to have to come out and play. And it's just that it's the interplay and it's the confidence and it's a player in form. I just think it suits. If anything, it suits Iheanacho. It suits us. That dynamism, just continuing it all throughout from what it's coming from, and also not to risk Vardy. We've got Chelsea coming up. I'd bring him back in for that. Well, yeah, I would. I think dropping Vardy back to back is probably.
Imagine though, Iheanacho bags a hat trick in a 3-0 win, sending us to Wembley. He's then played 3 games in a row, scoring, playing well. Are you really going to drop him? Now that's a headache for Brendan.
It is a headache. I can look at it from 2 ways though, because obviously if you do want to stretch the game, and I am an advocate of starting your strongest team,
always,
then you start Vardy. But then again, let's flip it on its head. Bring Vardy on for the last 15 minutes and stretch the game as well if we need him. So I will stand by it, and whether Vardy starts or not, it's not going to affect my evening. But if Iheanacho starts and we bring Vardy on, that probably, if you held a gun to my head, that's what I'd do.
He's agreeing with me, Jamie.
I know twice in one night. I'm not really sure where to go from here.
It's them audio books. He's got good zen.
For anyone wondering what's going on, Chris has been going through some quiet self-contemplation with an audio book, and he's controlled his deep-seated anger issues for this podcast, which has resulted in him agreeing with Ed not once but twice. Outstanding content.
What do you think, Jamie? Are you going to disagree?
No, I think play Big Ian. I'd have Big Ian up top anyway. I think he's still a very good player. We play nicely with him, so yeah, Iheanacho gets my vote. So what I know it is a bit actually. We need some bones of contention.
He did score in the first leg, remember?
He did.
Well.
I've got. I think it's perfect time to bring in the Rich Kinnaird question then.
Okay. I mean, do you want to introduce it?
Up, yes.
Go on then. You ask this one then, Chris.
The question he asked was, if you could guarantee one player to play 10 out of 10 tomorrow, or today, at time of listening, assuming they play first team, who would you pick? So what he's saying is, if you want a player to be on song tomorrow, who's it going to be? So Ed, go ahead and answer that one.
I've got a boring one and a non-boring one. The boring, stupid one that I'm even questioning now, I thought I'm saying it out loud, would be Kasper Schmeichel. Because the odds of you a keeper scoring a 10 and conceding is basically none, and therefore we would qualify.
However, if a keeper's to have a 10 out of 10, that makes for a very uncomfortable match, because I'm predicting that it's backs to the wall job.
I don't mind uncomfortable as long as we get through. However, in the more fun one, I'd probably go James Maddison. Like, if he's got a 10, he's really dominated that match and put his stamp on it, dictated play, possession, tempo. You creating chances, and if he gets 10 out of 10, we are in the final of the cup.
Okay. Well, I'll go next. Cause I know I was going to call it Vardy then. Me and Jamie. I'm calling you. Me and Jamie are probably going to have different answers, because I know who it is without even saying anything.
I've
got two. My obvious, two, right? So the obvious one, or the one I'd pick, would be Iheanacho, given if he starts, because I feel like you say, if we have a striker who's on song, grab him a couple of goals, big for the confidence, continues his hot streak. However, the boring one, and maybe more of a mental one in terms of his own mental space, would be Ben Chilwell if he starts. I want him to have a good game. I want him to be doing bombing up and down the pitch, having a good defensive game as well as a good attacking game, and just to get all this negative stigma off his back.
Oh, there we go.
That's a good answer. I like that one. Right, so mine is not actually Harvey Barnes, believe it or not, because in my eyes, he drops 10 out of 10 every game. No, in fact, Harvey,
brilliant.
if you're listening...
Valentine's Day is coming up.
Imagine. Sorry, Sarah. I'm off to see Harvey. Right, listen, my one would actually be Ricardo Pereira, because I think in the way that we play with the fullbacks, he is one of the more important players in our system. And against West Ham, they simply couldn't live with him. He had the freedom of that right-hand side and was creating chances, beating players. He had a few of their players pants down more than once. And actually, a stat about Pereira since the beginning of last season, he's had a direct hand in 13 goals. Only 2 more defenders in the league have had more than him. Any guesses who those might be?
Liverpool's fullbacks.
Yes, that is right. Robertson and Alexander-Arnold. It shows just how good he's been. And bearing in mind, he was doing that in a pretty abject side for the first half of last year. So him. And also, if he's playing on the right, I guess that means he will be having a bit of a hand in marking Grealish, who, in my mind, is their only threat. So if he drops a 10 out of 10, keeps Grealish quiet, probably contributes a goal for us as well. So that would be my one.
I'm not going to say anything about any of Aston Villa's players because I got involved in Mark Noble only for him to step up.
That was it. Chris's 2 main comments from last year were that Mark Noble was terrible. From last podcast, sorry. Mark Noble was terrible, and that Leicester's wingers are relegation form wingers.
2 goals for Perez, 2 assists for Barnes, and a goal for Noble. So,
needless to say, I didn't have a fiver on that.
Yeah.
No, but they were fair comments at the time. I don't think any of us disagreed with you either. So look, I mean, do you want to do a prediction for the game? Assuming that Leicester, being realistic, they're probably going to put a pretty strong side out at a guess. I actually think that you'll see the likes of Pereira, Chilwell, etc. will return. Assuming they do, what are your predictions?
I put 2-0 down on the Super 6, which is tomorrow, for those who need a reminder. 2-0. I think we'll keep them at bay. We've seen teams go to Villa Park all season and dominate them. Well, obviously they've had some good games at home as well, but I feel like, they need to come out and play. I've said it. I think quality, like nose to nose, we're better than them. So if it goes down to pure quality, we should have them. So 2-0.
Ed?
Obviously, I was also going to say 2-0, but I'll go 3-1. Team-wise, I do think, other than Iheanacho, it will be a full-strength team. Other than Vardy, Iheanacho in full-strength team, because yes, we've got Chelsea in a few days, but after that, there isn't a league game until the 14th of February. So there's a little gap there. So I don't think the players will be too fatigued from 2 matches in, 4 days, something like that. So yeah, 3-1, strong team, job done.
Well, I absolutely take that. I think it'll be a tight game. Villa will be up for it big time. God knows they need something good to go on up there. So I'll give you a 1-0 win to Leicester though. I think that with the form we showed against West Ham, it's starting to click again. Vardy backs a boost. So yeah, let's go 1-0. But of course, the next game, as Ed, you've alluded to, is a big one. And that's against Chelsea, who are 4th in the league. There's only 8 points separating us. I say only. There's 8 points separating us and Chelsea. But it's a massively significant game, isn't it, Chris? Because winning that match, suddenly that gap's looking even better.
It is, and I think you've just summarised how a lot or a majority of Leicester fans feel, in that you're saying only 8 points. Like if you're a neutral looking at that, you wouldn't be saying only 8 points. So there's that element of reservation, which I am inclined to agree with, even though I have been confident throughout the season. But yes, in terms of the fixture itself, Chelsea notoriously, well, maybe not notoriously, but they are better, or have been better away from home this season. I believe, just quickly looking at the table, they're the 3rd highest scoring away team. We've scored more away goals, but that's bearing in mind that Southampton results and Man City as well. So yeah, taking that into consideration, they're probably not the ideal team to be visiting us. It's hard for me to say how it's going to go. I think it's going to be a tricky game. And if it goes anything like the way that the Man City or Liverpool game have gone in terms of quality, then we've got to pull out a significantly better performance and not, like I say, we can't have a slum in this game. Like, we've got to sort of keep the performance high, otherwise we all get punished. You know, they've got good players.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've compared ourselves to them in a lot of ways because they've got a young squad and they are showing that inconsistency at the moment that comes with having such a young team. Obviously, they've drawn with Brighton, lost to Newcastle. They lost their lead against a 10-man Arsenal side. So, I mean, Ed, they're obviously going to be tricky opposition, but the game is definitely there for Leicester to win, isn't it?
Yes, Leicester, we forget they are also Tammy Abrahamless. Their top goal scorer is injured and will not be playing. They're going to either have to sign someone last minute in the transfer window and chuck him straight in, or they'll be playing Batshuayi up front, who doesn't inspire me. So they are slightly weakened. I do think this is such a massive game, which is why I'm super keen on Vardy not playing much against Villa, because like I said, it's 8 points now. If it gets to 11, well, for such obvious reasons, if we lose it's 5, if we win it's 11. That's a massive difference between what our mindset is between after this game and the end of the season. Like 11 points, it's very nearly like done, isn't it? Whereas 5 is, and I know Chris will not like me saying this, it is very nearly like looking over your shoulder, starting to get very worried. And given the game immediately after that as well is against Wolves, which is also, who are also in and around the area, these next 2 league games really are going to, like, we get good results in them, it could be like near enough finish, but if we slip up like we did early in the year against Man U, against Man City and Liverpool, we really are right in with the rest of the pack and in for a real fight to get into the Champions League. So big games. Exciting.
Massively. I definitely thought you were going to use the old cliche of a 6-pointer.
No, I was trying not to. Hence I went around the houses trying to explain the points.
Just say 6 points, so you know you want to.
There's 6 points difference.
There it is. Now, obviously, the game that we had against them away, a 1-1 draw, where Leicester possibly should have got the win. Actually, it was, I think you remember, a massive Ndidi mistake that gave Chelsea their goal. But shows that they're not infallible. I think, Chris, you're right as well. They do score most of their goals away. But they also do concede a massive amount of their goals away. But it could potentially be a massive game, couldn't it? And really have a massive impact on the whole season and where we finish. Chris's top 4 prediction would look a hell of a lot healthier should we come through that with a win, that's for sure.
They're really not in form either, you know. The last 4 league games, they've drew away at Brighton, lost away at Newcastle, and then they threw away their lead at home against 10-man Arsenal.
I think the player I want to isolate for them, who's been far from convincing, is the goalkeeper, who at the time was a record fee, wasn't he, Kepa? For goalkeepers, that is. But yeah, he's been far from convincing for me. He don't really strike me as, he's not dominating his box. He just seems a bit weak, and even when he sort of gets his hand onto the ball, which I think I heard on the radio this morning, it is funny how like he just doesn't seem to have strong wrists. It's like he's just sort of like a paper goalkeeper. So
you'd know all about strong wrists.
Cat flap wrists. That's what they say, isn't it? He just, you know what I mean, just keeps letting them in and out.
Well,
yeah, that is what they say, is it?
Yeah.
Well, I've never heard cat flap wrists.
Well, look, a man in the game such as myself.
Yeah.
But they were.
It's an old saying, isn't it?
Yeah, from back in the day. Thank you.
No,
old.
I'm not sure how you can isolate a keeper, but maybe from like set pieces or just shooting at the goalkeeper, or well, preferably not right at him, but somewhere around his wrist area.
Oh, for God's sake! But no, interestingly, I was talking to a Chelsea fan at the weekend, and he was saying that he wants him gone. He wants to sell Kepa. He did also have a fairly ambitious deal in mind, which involved Atletico and Jan Oblak coming the other way, which I can't necessarily see.
I think
But
Nick Pope's more of a realistic option.
he was the other guy, he said, to be fair. But interestingly, though, one of the players that he said that he would like to see sold in and amongst about 6 of them was one N'Golo Kante.
Jeez, that's football fans. I'm glad he said that, because obviously it's not just us. We've got a balmy set of fans on the fickle front. Kante, Kante is still
20 million.
The best defensive midfielders in world football. Like I can't name someone who's more consistent. Like, I feel like his downfall at Chelsea has been being played out of position last season. Like,
yes,
so you can't really. But the thing is, he's one of the players. He gives 110%, and quality-wise, he is still. I guess it poses the question.
Like Mark Albrighton.
Yeah, well, okay. How's about this one then? If you could have Ndidi or Kante in Leicester's team, one or the other, who are you having?
Ndidi.
I'm going to say Ndidi, you know.
Well,
wouldn't mind both.
I would take either. But no, I know what you mean. I think that's only out of bias to Ndidi, and also the fact that he's 23, so he can only get better. But I think they've been playing him out of position, Kante, like you said, and that is where this frustration comes from. They play him on the right side of a 3, as opposed to the holding role, and so he's getting his detractors up at Chelsea. But I mean, you'd have him back, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like you said, he'd.
No release clause this time, though.
I'd play him on wing instead of Harvey Barnes.
He did all right on the wing. He started on the wing, didn't he, for Leicester? Did all right in his first game, I seem to remember. But I think, imagine having a holding pair of Ndidi and Kante. The other side would quite literally never see the ball.
Name me a better pair.
Well, there you go. I'll wait.
Family show.
Look, speaking of transfers,
send pictures of your favourite players.
This is transfers coming in to try and bring this back to something resembling semi-serious.
Semi what?
Oh, for God's sake, can't help it, can we? I'm trying to word this now. I don't want to say the only concrete link is that we've had is Jan Vestergaard.
I've got a concrete link.
Southampton. Right, we're definitely going to have to get rid of that, aren't we? Couldn't help myself. Also, Ed, you giggle like a little girl. What the hell? Right, do you want to start? Should you try that one again? No, we'll just keep this going. Right, Ed, Jan Vestergaard coming in to Leicester. Yay or nay? Let's go.
He's tall and blonde.
Yeah, well,
I think we've broken Ed.
Sorry. Right. Yay. In a weird way, yay. Because of the following reasons. He's coming in. We are looking for literally a 4th choice defender, so we can send Benkovic out to get game time because he's young and needs to develop. Whoever comes in at best will play, provided no one gets injured, 2, 3, 4 matches this season, predominantly in the cups. Southampton fans aren't exactly sad to see these rumours, which are slightly concerning. However, he was highly rated before he went there. He's Danish international and could probably do worse for a backup. With that being said, I know money's crazy these days, but being talked of like 15 to 20 million pounds seems a lot of money. Some people are arguing it would be more sensible to just wait until the summer and rather than buy someone who's a backup, go to someone who's going to improve the first team. But I guess it's up to the management staff really, like what they want to do with Benkovic, because keeping him here for the rest of the season is not going to aid his development whatsoever. So I see this signing more as to sort of help him develop more than anything.
I mean, there's a few clubs interested in him. I think Middlesbrough are the latest ones. Celtic want him back. So it would make sense to free that up. But in terms of cover, it's just a bit underwhelming, isn't it, Chris?
Well, he's 27 years old as well. It's had we not had a successful sort of background in recruitment, I'd be scratching my head/chin right now. But regular listeners will understand that one. But no, in terms of 15 to 20 million, it's not a bad amount of money, is it? Given our net in compared to net outgoings recently. Like I said, I can only think that recruitment have maybe had an eye on him since his time at Mönchengladbach, and they see something in him. And it wouldn't be the first time that we've signed someone that everyone else has been like, what? And then he turns out to be, a very good player. Obviously, again, with one eye on the Champions League, so he will probably be getting a significant amount of game time.
Yeah, I think whenever signings like this come up, I think the best indication is looking at fans of the club where he's at, and they were positively thrilled to see him linked with a move away, which doesn't necessarily bode well. But
they're probably just happy it's not for Liverpool.
Yeah, not sure how to react to it. But I mean, like you said, he'd largely be a backup. He'd only probably play in the cup competitions, I guess. Or if we were struggling with injuries.
But look at Söyüncü. He stepped up to the mark gloriously. Like, I'm not wishing anything bad on anyone. But if an injury was to happen to Evans or Söyüncü, then you potentially got a really good player waiting. And the fact he isn't young means that he's old enough and he's experienced enough to essentially step in.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, he started well at Southampton. He's tailed off a bit since then, but might not be the worst one in the world.
It's one of those, how well can you... Well, I guess it's Virgil van Dijk probably going to ruin this argument, but how well can you judge a defender well, maybe you can judge a defender better when it's for a weaker side, but it's one of those, if you play for a better team, better players around you, maybe your quality shines more.
Very true.
I think it's similar to the situation, though, with like chats we've had before about getting a Vardy replacement and stuff. It's like, players know now, especially if we're not looking for a big name centre back, that they're not going to be in the first choice starting 11 between now and the end of the season. Like, even if there's the prospect they might be sort of weaned in next year and might get some Champions League time or whatever, they know that for the next 6 months they're hardly going to play. So do you have to sort of, if you're desperate to sign a backup, you do have to sort of lower your expectations a little bit to find someone that will realistically come and be happy to sit on the bench.
True. Because I suppose you can't necessarily just have a young player with scope to develop, because should there be an injury, they're probably not going to be up to task if it's early, which I guess is the point of having a backup. And also, whilst I just remember, I completely forgot to get your predictions for Chelsea.
Okay.
So Chris, do you want to do yours first, mate?
Ooh, it's a tricky one. You got me thinking about defenders now. 2-1 Leicester, and we will go behind and come back to win.
Very specific. Edward?
I'm going to go for a 3-0 win. I just don't see Chelsea without their star striker. I just don't know what threat they're going to be. I'm feeling confident. I think they're going to come off the back of getting into a final. They're all going to be buzzing. They know this. If this game goes right, we're almost there within touching distance. I think everyone's going to be up for it, and absolute dominant performance. 3-0.
Be an apt time to get a performance out of them, but yes and no in terms of you're missing your star striker. But even then, Tammy Abraham had gone off the boil a little bit, and then just as he's going off, you got someone like Hudson-Odoi coming back. Willian's been a different player this season. Kovacic again turned up. Kante, obviously, you got Jorginho in the middle. Then people like Aspie, who for the last couple of seasons disappeared. He's suddenly turned up to be that wing back that he was once, and then Emerson's been alright on the other side. So there's a lot of quality there, and if we play as poorly in periods as we have against West Ham and other teams, Brentford, to name but two recently, we will get punished. So that's why I'm not 100% certain. I do see him scoring, to be fair.
Well, I mean, I don't really know how to call it either. It's a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, Ed's been remarkably optimistic. More
just
so
fancy
than
it. Just up for it, lads.
It's been a bit of a strange podcast, all in all. I think I wouldn't be surprised if it was a draw, actually. It really depends on how we start. And like you said, the atmosphere is going to be really important. Fans have really got to be on it. But 2-2 draw, I think. Score draw, definitely.
The bookmakers have Chelsea as slight favourites.
Well,
if that means anything.
Oh yeah, well, the bookmakers also have as favourites to sign Jesse Lingard. So I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what they know. I mean,
good Maddison replacement.
I mean, speaking of that transfer, that rumour, we might as well just give it a little bit of time. I mean, do you think that he's been sort of turned into a bit of a meme? Like as in, it's almost fashionable to criticise the guy.
Or I think he found his level yesterday against Tranmere, didn't he? So, is there any League One clubs interested in him?
I genuinely think he's like a lower Premier League, upper Championship.
I'd throw him in Leeds United. I want to sell Gray to Leeds, and maybe Gray and Lingard could become. Imagine them two on the wings could tear it up at the Championship and be handy players at Premier League level.
Can you imagine? You just know if we sold him to Leeds and Leeds were promoted, he's definitely scoring against us, isn't he?
True, but at this point, I do want to bring in Key Goods with our man Amar. He's like our correspondent, who did ask a question. He says, who do you want to make way for in the summer to allow space for better quality players? So I guess that we've sort of reverse answered that in the way that maybe Gray could be that player we make way of. I don't think he's on significant wages or anything like that, but we've referred to wingers all along, and so I'd like to see a lot more quality out there on the wing, but I don't think it's a case necessarily of making way. If anything, if Gray was half decent, we'd hold on to him as a squad player, but I don't even think he's of that level.
Less than half decent.
Yeah, so if you're going to quantify it, I'd say 4.5 out of 10.
I mean, he is only 22 still, so I guess he's still got time.
True, actually. Imagine if he was like, what's Lingard, like 26? So yeah, you see a bit of you can see why he is a real life meme, actually.
Because he's I mean, Gray is on around 50 to 60k a week, I'd imagine, at Leicester. So not huge wages in the context of a football club, but still it's fairly significant money. You'd like to think you could get a pretty good player on that.
He's obviously English.
You would say no.
He's in England, well, not full international yet, but whether or not there's that quota stuff that it's important to have. Obviously, it's nice to have an English core, obviously domestically, but I don't think he's going to be knocking on the Southgate's door anytime soon.
I mean, to answer Amar's question, just from my point of view, I think it's more about the players in and around the squad that I'd probably want to see gone in order to free up the money. I mean, Adrian Silva, I'm not sure what his agreement is at Monaco, but he was on around 80k a week, and then you've got players like, I mean, well, probably one of the biggest ones is Kapuchka. I think he's on about 30 grand.
Man's stealing a living to
and I don't think he's even playing for the bloody under 23s. Like, that's unbelievable.
I wouldn't be surprised if he actually, purely because of another bad prediction I made. Well, it was semi-bad. I said that an under 23 would get outed against Brentford, and we've seen that. But he's gone. He has literally vanished out of the whole picture. He's not even in the under 23 squad. So maybe it could be send a few of them out on loan and then potentially sell them. Yeah, like you say, 30 grand for for having a knee injury or whatever. He had his
A lot of money. I mean,
There's a lot of players. There's like Slimani, Silva, Gazelle,
forgot about
King,
Gazelle.
Matty James,
Gazelle, where is he?
Harvey Barnes. What? Is it Fiorentina?
Harvey Barnes is still on an apprentice wage. He got 25 quid a week.
yeah, he gets lifted to work. I think he's on about 10 grand a week.
You probably do stalk him and have access to his bank accounts, so I'll take your word for it.
Not that he's aware about, but I think he'd be on about. But I mean, yeah, it's more about cutting the sort of the chaff out, isn't it? I mean, can anyone remember that Eldin Jakupovic actually was a thing? He was in the squad against Brentford.
Yeah, but he's like a professional squad player. There's them players like Lee Grant and all that lot. Like I swear, Richard Wright. Remember him? Man City. Like he's a coach now, but I swear he spent half his career just being a third choice keeper.
Yeah, remember Rob Green being the backup at Chelsea at one point.
Yeah, so I think that's an actual position now, isn't it? Like just a squad keeper, someone who's happy to take like even 10 grand. I say even, 10 grand a week just for turning up to training every day.
I mean, probably the biggest current one of that is Scott Carson. I mean, do you even know where he is?
Man City,
isn't he?
He's at Man City. Unbelievable. I see the photos of him like lifting the trophies and stuff. Absolutely living the dream. What a man. But yeah, in answer to your question, I think that they would rather strengthen the squad as a whole in order to be able to bring in better depth is my very boring answer.
There's certainly a lot of players who can get relatively easily cut from the squad before you actually start thinking of who in the match day squad might be let go to improve. Like you could easily get rid of 4 or 5 on decent wages.
That was an interesting one though, because this is absolutely pointless debate because I don't think any of us know how he's doing out there. But he's a winger, and if he's doing half decent, could he potentially be reintroduced? Because I don't have a clue how he's doing.
He's only played 9 games in all competitions this season, and he's made 1 assist in that time. So not the best. Certainly not pulling up trees.
Not selling himself to Rodgers.
What's Diabate doing? He's on loan at. Remember him?
I forgot about him actually.
He's 24 now. He's in France at the moment. Only played a couple of games. Was on loan last year in the.
He's in Turkey,
the Turkish, yeah.
Who's he play for in France?
Amiens.
Yeah, thank you.
And by all accounts, isn't exactly tearing it up. He's got 2 assists in 13 games in League One.
League One.
Is Andy King's contract not run out yet?
I think it's due to expire soon, so he'll be one of those.
There's a lot of uproar that his 400th career appearance was actually at Huddersfield.
I mean, imagine just bringing him on for about 30 seconds at the end of one of the Premier League games. You couldn't have done that, could you? But I think he'll get a testimonial. That wouldn't surprise me to see.
As a Leicester player, here's one for the older listeners, or Jamie, if you're old and a listener.
Thank you.
I don't remember Leicester City having a testimonial fixture. I mean, you don't really find them a lot anywhere, to be fair, but have we ever had a testimonial for anyone? Who's been a great servant to the club?
I can't remember one.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think, not in a... Well, I think testimonials are more of a thing like 70s, 80s sort of thing. But, yeah, I don't remember us having one, or at least attending it.
No. A quick look on eBay tells me that there's a programme from Alan Woolett's testimonial game in 1977. Answers on a postcard who he is.
I've just thumbed through the archives, and it's Steve Walsh, apparently.
Well, there you go. Very deserving man.
Iconic.
But right, listen, I think that's a good a note as any to wrap it up on. We're all predicting positive results over this next week. It's going to be a big week for Leicester. Of course, I will ask you, as always, if you do have anything else to add. Ed, you don't normally like to chuck something in.
No, I've quite literally nothing to add. I'm all laughed out after the fun of earlier.
Nothing to add over the last hour either, if it helps. But Chris, anything from you?
Yeah, because in DM you said if anyone listens to this bit, you'll get that tattoo Sionchu on your back. So
No.
if anyone is listening, send at Thorpe, whatever your username is, or just tag us First4LCFC, your favourite picture of Sionchu, and we'll go down to the tattoo shop and get that sorted.
Yeah, it's spelled at Christian Mosen, all one word. Please feel
Classic.
free to send me photos or abuse.
2 weeks in a row now. That's good.
But thank you. Yes, mate, they never get old. Thank
send
you.
your favourite pets, that one, if you want.
Thank you very, very much for listening. This has been largely nonsensical, almost for the entire thing. But it has been a pleasure, lads. Hopefully, we can do this again next week and look back on 2 wins again. That would be very, very nice. So hope to see you then.
Nice pair of wins.
Wow.